There's a very important aspect to language learning that I have to talk about in this video. It's becoming more and more clear to me, more clear than ever. There's, imagine this spectrum between S and T, all right? S is strategy, T is tactical, and imagine that you're somewhere on that spectrum. So strategic is, I like to think of strategy as those are the plans you make when the pressure is not on. You know, like, here's what I think I'll do. I guess theory and practice. If you go to the extreme end of the tactical side of things, you would find like this is exactly how to deal with a situation like in a foreign country, like in real life. I find that there's a center point. Like if you think of there being 7 degrees in total, like 7, I don't know, chakras. And the center one is the heart chakra. This is the heart of the method. This is the green chakra. This is the heart of the method. It's dealing with an OPI. Right? I've talked about it many times. So the OPI, if you haven't heard, oral proficiency interview. This is the military style speaking. This is the test that I took. I've taken many OPIs in my day, actually. And helped a lot of people train for the OPI. That's the military method. That's the military background. It's a speaking test. Okay, so how an OPI works is you get asked questions. If I'm taking the OPI, I get asked questions. Okay, and the questions start off easy, and they get an idea of what you can do, and then they push further. Right. So here's what it comes down to: is that there's a lot of ways to slice it. Like there's a lot of things you can do to learn a language and practice and do this. And there's reading, there's listening. I know there's all that stuff, and it's all great. But here's my question: how well would you do in an OPI? How many questions can you answer, and how well can you answer those questions? On it, seriously. Like think about the language that you're learning. Doesn't matter how long you've been studying or what you've been doing. My question is, how well would you do in an OPI? The OPI begins, it's all in your target language, could be Spanish, could be Czech. And they say, okay, tell me about yourself. What's your name? Where are you from? Okay. Describe your city. All right. They can tell that you do what, then they start moving up into like, okay, talk about, give me, what advice do you have for me in terms of how to learn a language or cook pasta or something? They keep running you through these tests. Give me your opinion on current events they get into. Then very hypothetical stuff like, oh, what more abstract? You get the idea. It gets increasingly hard. What if there was a list of, say, 100 questions in the language that you've been learning, and a native speaker comes along, and they're going to give you the OPI, which means they're going to ask you those questions. So 100 questions. Can you answer 100 questions in that language? I find that the best way to know how well you know a language is not by measuring how many words you know, but rather how many questions can you answer. Like if you're going to count something, count how many questions you can answer. Okay. Many times I've thought of the OPI as a game like Space Invaders type, like old school video game where the aliens come and you got to like shoot them down. Questions come at you. What's your favorite color? What's your da-da-da? When's the last time you did it? How you? Questions come at you. You got to shoot down the question with your answer in the target language. That's the game. Imagine this were a martial art, and so you got your sensei coming at you, and they're throwing punches, and you got to go boom, boom, like the Matrix movie, like Kung Fu. Like you got to be able to defend yourself against questions. How well could you defend yourself against 100 questions in your target language? This is the hardest part, but an OPI is the most uncomfortable experience that there is. I mean, I love it, but it is the most uncomfortable part of like thing possible in language learning. You just you're in the hot seat. And it's like, all right, we're going to just ask you questions until you can't anymore. And you're just like, okay. It's the hardest thing. You also having to answer, that's even hard. Having to answer questions is harder than being able to ask questions. Like if I was able to go into an interview and have like 20 questions like prepared for you, at least I would be able to control the flow somewhere. No, I don't even get to do that. I'm not asking any questions. I'm being asked questions too. It's the highest standard in terms of how well you actually know a language. Can you answer 100 questions in your target language? Can you defend yourself against, how well would you do in an OPI? If you're not 100% sure that you can answer, say, 100 questions in your target language, if you're not sure that you could do an OPI in your language, then this method is right for you, because that's what we're here to do. Demonstrate how conversation is like a martial art or like a game, like chess. And it all comes down to how well you can play that game. We're here to teach the martial art or chess game of conversation in a foreign language.